Lucky you, YouTube, you get two videos from me today. Today's second video is a Bill 69 entry. I told you last time I did one, maybe last week or a couple weeks ago, that I had two of these in the works, and this is obviously the second one. These three games, me and my buddy Simon completed. We finished the third of these three games kind of in and around the first week of December. These three happened kind of from mid-October up until that first week of December. We had a good run there. That was a pretty quick turnaround for three more games, and this trio is pretty fantastic for a couple of reasons, and I will explain those reasons along the way. First game. Are you all ready for this? Released in 1992 for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System by JVC, none other than Super Star Wars. Super Star Wars is a game that I had as a youngster, the cartridge for my Super Nintendo, and this was a game that me and my friends and cousins loved to play because we all love Star Wars like an insane amount. The only thing about this game, though, this original one, is that it is so effing hard that we would always get like to the same point into the game before we'd be like, we give up, right? It was just so hard. You could only get to a certain point in the game, and you were just handcuffed, right? So 30 years later or more, we finally put it to bed. Now, Super Star Wars retells basically the events of the original Star Wars A New Hope movie from 1977. The majority of the levels take place on Tatooine, in and around there, and then it moves on to the Death Star for a little bit before the final trench run on the Death Star. So you start off as Luke Skywalker outside your homestead on Tatooine, and you basically move through the Dune Sea. Then you find a sandcrawler, you climb the sandcrawler. Another level, you're inside the sandcrawler. There's a couple of vehicle levels where you're in a land speeder and you're taking out Jawas for some reason. Then you get to the cantina, and then you're finally escaping through the docking bay on the Millennium Falcon. So I think 6 or 7. I think there's like 12 levels in this game, I think. And 6 or 7 or 8 of them are all on Tatooine, and then there's, I think, 3 or so levels on the Death Star where you get there, you rescue the princess, then you make your escape before heading back to Yavin, and then the final level, you're in an X-wing making the trench run on the Death Star before you blow it up. So most of the levels are side-scrolling platformer levels, but 3 of them are vehicle levels, the Death Star trench run, and then there's 2 separate land speeder levels on Tatooine where, like I said, you're taking out Jawas and for some reason. So most of the enemies you'll face in this game, there's the stormtroopers, there's Tusken Raiders, there's all the different types of enemies you see in the movies, but there's also ones that are only alluded to in the movies, like womp rats, like you have to fight them off, sort of thing. So there's stuff that shows up that aren't in the Star Wars movie. There are bosses throughout the game. There's a Sarlacc pit, there's this Imperial security droid, and a bunch of other stuff along the way. Not every level finishes with a boss. There's only a handful of them throughout the game. And along the way, there are also many items to pick up. Small hearts refill your health gauge a little bit. Large hearts more so. If you pick up a lightsaber, it expands the capacity of your health bar. A Darth Vader icon doubles your points for a short time. Thermal detonator, you have a certain amount of time to use it, and it obliterates all the enemies on the screen. An icon of Luke's head gives you an extra life. What else is there? There's some other stuff as well. Shields give you temporary invulnerability, I think. And then you can get upgrades to your blaster as well to increase the power on it. So lots of stuff to be on the lookout for. And another cool feature of the game is that once you reach a certain point, I think it's when you talk to Han and Chewie in the cantina, after that you can choose to use any one of those three characters in the levels moving forward from that point. So you don't play the whole game as Luke, or you don't have to. You can choose to take Han and Chewie for a spin as well. So yeah, you just buckle down and blast through those 12 levels, and you've blown up the Death Star, and at least staved off destruction of the galaxy for at least a little bit anyways, until they try again. The Empire tries again. So this game, it was just in a time where there wasn't really, I mean, now there's tons of Star Wars games, right? In this age where Star Wars just has been going on for so long and has had so many chapters written in its story, there's of course a ton of video games to go along with it. But back in 1992, I remember there was a Star Wars game for Atari, and it was a piece of shit. I think there was one or two for the NES, which I never had, but that was about it that I knew of. So for there to be a Star Wars game on the Super Nintendo in the early 90s, let alone one that was so fucking good, like, this was a big deal to us back then, right? The Star Wars game was just a big deal. So, and it looks amazing, it sounds amazing. It's like, you can tell it's a Super Nintendo game when you turn it on, which is a good thing, because Super Nintendo is an amazing system. Controls perfectly, just captures Star Wars so well. The only downside of it is that, like I said, it's just so bloody hard. So you really have to have your wits about you to beat this game. It's almost like you have to be able to use the Force, honestly, to beat this game. It's so hard. But hey, call me and Simon Jedi, because we did it. Second game, you know, Star Wars, Super Star Wars was a great way to start this trio. This one takes it even next level. This game was released by Sunsoft in the year 1988, which was a fantastic year, for the Nintendo Entertainment System, and the game is none other than the highly esteemed, momentous, earth-shattering Blaster Master. I bought this game for the Nintendo when I was a kid on a whim. I went to the store with some money. I don't know if they were just low on games, and there wasn't, you know, a Mega Man that I wanted or something, right? Because I saw this game, and you saw the picture. The case is kind of weird, right? You can't even really tell what the game is about. I just saw it and I was like, I want this game for some reason. And so I bought it, and I got it home, and it became probably my favorite game of all time. When I talk about my favorite games, Blaster Master is always at the top of the list. I kind of separate it into, I always call it my favorite standalone game, because it isn't part of a series. It was only Blaster Master. Now, that's not true anymore, as you may know, because I've talked about on my Nintendo Switch the Blaster Master Zero series, of which there are 3 games, but those weren't released until well into the 2000s, and the original was from 1988. So for a long time, it was the only entry in the Blaster Master franchise. So I consider it a standalone game, and it was just added on to later on. There is one for PS1 as well. I can't remember what it's called. I have it. That was released probably, I'm guessing, in the late 90s, maybe, something like that. But again, it took a long time for that to come out. So, you know, and then I'll say, like, my favorite game series is probably Mega Man, because there's so many entries in that franchise. So it's like standalone versus series. It's a way for me to get 2 games in there as my favorites, right? But anyways, the Blaster Master story is this. One day, a young teen, I think, named Jason, is out frolicking in his backyard with his esteemed amphibian pal, his frog Fred, when Fred finds a hole in the backyard in the grass and falls down it and disappears. What does a young boy do? Why, he follows the frog. However, falling down this hole, Jason is surprised to see at the bottom of it not just Earth or a cave or something like that. But this futuristic looking vehicle called the Sophia that is just sitting there gleaming, and there's no sign of Fred around, and he goes, well, since there's this futuristic looking beautiful machine here, I'm gonna hop in and I'm gonna go look for my frog. So you climb aboard the Sophia, and you soon find out that the Sophia is there for a reason. It's a piece of tech that is designed to fight off mutants. And there are lots of mutants below the Earth's crust. They pretty much inhabit the whole core of the world at this point. So he goes about trying to find his beloved pet frog and saving mankind from a mutant menace at the same time, sort of thing. So Blaster Master consists of 8 total stages. They all kind of have themes. The first one's a very nature, like grass and waterfalls, that kind of thing. There's also, of course, a snow and ice one, and then like a hot lava kind of one. Then there's like a really weird alien themed one, and then there's one that's like basically like a futuristic like tech. It's all like metal and electronics and stuff like that. So they all have their theme, and then the enemies will oftentimes mimic their environment. The enemies in the cold will be cold-based enemies, and same, like you'll have hot lava freaks of nature coming at you in the lava one, right? So they kind of follow the theme of the level. The mutants are not only organic in nature, but there are a lot of robots in the game as well. So it's not just a mutant invasion. You've got some tech involved. So you basically have to traipse through these 8 stages, beat a boss that lurks at the end of each stage, and basically beat the final boss, get your frog back, and save mankind from the mutants, right? Now, what's really cool about this game, which I really loved at first, is at any time during the game when you're driving along in the Sophia, you can press select, and Jason will pop out of the Sophia, and you can take him out on foot. However, you don't want to do that in most areas of the game, because although the Sophia has no problem taking out the enemies, when you've got just Jason with his little blaster, they'll kill you really fast, and they're really hard to kill with your little blaster. So you will reach certain areas in each level where it'll be a little building with a little doorway in it, and those are the areas that you get out and get Jason, and then go into these buildings. And then the whole aspect of the game shifts. It goes from a side-scrolling kind of thing to more of a top-down view, with Jason being enlarged and everything being bigger, sort of thing, to account for his diminutive size. Everything gets magnified, sort of thing. So this is where you will find the boss of each world will be in one of these chambers, but there's more than one chamber in each level. So some of them you'll just go in, there'll be a bunch of enemies in there, plus a bunch of stuff you can destroy to find upgrades and items. And then you can just exit and move on. But one of them in each stage will have that level's boss. So there are a number of items to look for in the game. The Sophia has its main cannon, but it also has 3 kind of alternate sub-weapons, I guess. You will find ammo canisters for those 3 sub-weapons scattered around, and most items are obtained. Some of them, sometimes they can just be lying around, but a lot of the time they are left when you destroy an enemy. The little icons with the letter P inside of it is basically power, so it refills your energy gauge. This applies whether you're in the Sophia or whether you're on foot with Jason. It's the same thing. Same thing, little round icons with an H in the middle is basically refills your hover gauge, which the Sophia, as you make it through the game, you'll get upgrades for the Sophia. One of them is a hover, where your wheels turn upside down, and it's like the Cobra Rattler plane, where you're like hovering, and you can basically fly around. One of them is like a motor on the back that you obtain that helps you go through water, because at first you just sink and you can only go along the bottom, so you can't reach some areas. So you have to get this upgrade in order to, reach different areas underwater. So those are upgrades you have to obtain. And then, like I said, the H icon refills your hover gauge once you have that upgrade. You can upgrade your gun when you're just Jason, so you can get those icons. And then I think, is that about it? Yeah, I think so. Um, so yeah, when you reach the boss chamber in each level, all of the bosses are organic in nature. There's no robot bosses, and they're all really big, way bigger than Jason, so that they are big bosses. There's like a big mutant brain. There's like a big crab creature. You even have to take on a mutated Fred at some point during the game as one of the bosses, among a bunch of other ones, plus the end boss at the end of the game. Um, one of the hardest parts of the game is when you say you defeat a boss in like stage 3 or whatever. You then have to find the gateway that will take you to stage 4. Now, the gateway to the next stage is not always within the stage that came before it. Like sometimes, I don't know if this is how it was, but like for example, say you beat the boss in stage 3, you're looking for the stage 4 door. You may have to go back to stage 1 and use one of your new Sophia upgrades to access a previously inaccessible area to find the gateway to level 4. So you really have to memorize A, where are the boss chambers in each level, and then B, where are the gateways to all the different stages. Because a lot of times, like when you're first learning this game, the first couple levels are okay because they're pretty straightforward, but then as you get deeper into the game and you've been more places and there's more options to backtrack and do stuff like that, it really, you got to be thinking and you got to memorize where you have to go in each scenario, sort of thing. So that's half the battle in the game. Half the battle is learning how to execute and use Jason and the Sophia to your best advantage, and the other aspect is just remembering where you got to go half the time. So this game, just such a cool feature, that the duality of being in the Sophia and then also being able to be out on foot in that different looking aspect when you're on foot. That was to me as a kid in 1988, with the NES being the first really good gaming system, I thought that was a really kind of innovative feature that I had never really seen in a game before, and I thought that was really cool. Same thing with the backtracking and the figuring out where you got to go. I thought that was, even though it was a pain in the ass, I thought it was a really neat feature and something that made the game even more challenging than it already was. And same thing as with Super Star Wars, the game, you can tell it's an NES game. It looks fantastic. It sounds fantastic. It controls amazing. Everything about this game is executed perfectly. But most of all, it was just such a unique game that was just so out of left field. And I'm so glad I bought it, because if I didn't have Blaster Master in my life, I'd be poorer for it. If that makes any sense. I wouldn't know I'd be poorer for it, but I would be. Awesome game. Awesome game. My favorite. Last up, this is another cool entry because none of us had this game. It's such a highly recognizable game and series, but none of us had it as kids. And I don't think I'd ever even really played it before, to be honest. Not even for like a second. But I'd always wanted to. So we finally got the chance. And we put it to rest, and it took us a while because it's a hard game too. Released in 1987 for the Nintendo Entertainment System as well by Konami. Konami, awesome. The original Castlevania. So in Castlevania, you control a monster hunter named Simon Belmont, who comes equipped with a whip. He has vowed to free Transylvania of the terror it has endured at the hands of Vlad the Impaler, otherwise known as Dracula. So that's basically the premise. You're a monster hunter and you're out to kill Dracula and free all the people from his tyranny. So you set out on this quest. There are about 20 stages in Castlevania. Not all of them end with a boss. It's pretty random. I think there's about maybe a half dozen bosses in the game. And you'll along the way, most of the enemies you'll face, I think, well, probably all of them are organic in nature. There's, there's bats, there's jungle cats, there's big birds. Um, what else was there? And then there's other things like ghouls and ghosts and stuff like that, right? So it's all, there's no tech or anything involved. It's all old school kind of creatures and stuff. The bosses are like, you have to fight Medusa along the way, a mummy, Frankenstein, a big vampire bat, the Grim Reaper, and then eventually, of course, Dracula himself at the end of the game. Um, the pickups in the weapon system in this game are a little different. Like I said, he comes equipped with a whip. If you pick up whip icons, it makes your whip a little longer and more powerful, so it's handy to have those pickups, but you can lose them when you get hit too, so it's a very fine balance in maintaining a good whip. There are secondary weapons you can obtain, like daggers. What else is there? Shit, holy water, and a couple of other ones. And when you obtain these secondary weapons, you need ammo to use them. Like your whip, you can use unlimited, but for the secondary weapons, you need ammo to use them. And the ammo actually comes in the form of hearts, which is so weird because hearts are always like health pickups, right? So every time we see that the hearts, we're like, oh good, I needed energy. And it's like, you didn't get any energy out of it. And it's like, oh fuck yeah, that's right. That's our ammunition for the secondary weapons, right? So, so it's a little weird that way, but same thing as Super Star Wars. A little heart gives you a little bit of ammo, and a bigger heart gives you more ammo, sort of thing. There's a few other pickups. There's little pickups that have like Roman numerals 2 or 3 on it. You pick them up, and basically, it means you can have either 2 or 3 of your sub weapons on the screen at any given time, like kind of not a rapid fire feature, but you can multi-use, right? So instead of just being able to fire it once, waiting until it hits the enemy or it's off the screen and then fire again, you can fire 2 or 3 at once, sort of thing, right? So there's one as well. Is it a rosary? No, that's one of the sub weapons. There's one thing that you can obtain, and it basically clears the screen of all enemies. I forget what it is. And then, of course, there's meat, which is the actual health pickup that replenishes your health. And then there's a couple more that I'm forgetting, but there's a lot of pickups in this game. One of the sub weapons is like a stopwatch. It allows you to freeze time. So instead of engaging enemies, you actually slip by them and get the fuck out of dodge, sort of thing. Yeah, so there's a couple things I'm missing, but that's the most of it. But this game, like, Konami is such a good game developer, especially early on with the NES. Especially, they had so many games for the NES, and they were all good. I'm sure there were a couple duds here or there, but all the ones we ever played, we loved. Konami was, their games. It's like Capcom. You turn on a game, and it's like, oh, this must have been made by Konami, because they have such a distinct look and sound to them. You can just tell, right? And this game is no exception. It's very Konami, and very much a lot of fun, but hard. Hard as hell. And this is a surprising thing. All 3 of these games are hard games. Super Star Wars, hard as hell. Blaster Master, yeah, hard as hell. And Castlevania, hard as hell. 3 hard as hell games we played for this edition of Bill 69. Yet somehow it only took us under 2 months to finish all 3 of them, which is weird, right? Because we've been stuck on some hard as hell games before for months just on one of them, right? Sort of thing. So it was kind of weird that we managed to finish, bang out all 3 of these in such a quick amount of time. But, that was good. We needed that. And it was such a good session too, because like I said, Blaster Master, my favorite game of all time, Super Star Wars, one of our collective favorite games of all time, and then something like Castlevania, which we had never gotten to play but always wanted to play, right? So this was a really good session, really satisfying session too, to be able to defeat all 3 of these hard games. And guess what, we're 3 games closer to the completion of our Bill 69 quest. I think right now we're in the 50s. So we don't have a lot of games left, and we have them all mapped out. We have our 5-year plan in place, so to speak, for how we're finishing this this quest out. So hopefully right now we've got 2 games on the go, both of which are long in the tooth. Oh no, sorry, we already finished one, and the other one's long in the tooth. So you will be seeing another Bill 69 entry in the very near future, I'm sure, unless we get hung up on a hard third game. But at the rate we're kicking them out these days, I doubt that'll happen. So you will be seeing 3 more in the near future, and that means we're going to be another 3 closer to the end of this quest. So stay tuned, and you'll just have to enjoy the wait.